Yes.
Yes, everyone. Note it down.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Arpit, can you email it to me then, like through the device that you are using currently?
Sir, I am using a laptop. And how will I click the picture?
Yes. Okay. Anything can be done. Otherwise, then you have to check your own paper with me.
Sir, I'll borrow this one.
See if you can send it. If not, then
Sir, I'll be sending. No issues.
okay. So shall I come to the test? Everyone has noted this. This is also
Yes, sir.
information on, so you can reach out to me regarding anything. If you are not able to communicate with the communication department or Learnivio, you can reach out to me at these two things with any query or anything you want to know, or you want to tell me regarding your syllabus or something that has cropped up in school regarding anything. If you want to notify me something, just reach out to me on these two, number and email. Okay. Okay, I'm just shutting it down now. So everyone ready with pen and paper? We'll first
Yes, sir.
test and then we'll talk about it and also do the class. So I'm sharing with you question paper and then I will start the time. Okay. I'll give you a couple of minutes extra. Is the screen visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Can you see all the 8 questions, 4 in 2 markers and 4 in 3 markers?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So your time starts now. I'll be here. I'll just put my camera off, but I'll be listening to you. If you have any doubt, anything, just like an invigilator, you can ask. Okay. Just raise your hand and ask at any given time. So you can start with your test, which is for 30 minutes. Okay. 32. Let's 2 minutes extra. I'm starting the timer now. Let's begin. And remember 2 things also for your school examination and boards. Biology paper attempted neat and clean in good handwriting can fetch you some extra marks. It happened for me. It will happen for you as well. And keep it to the point. Okay. And ask me if there is any doubt. Everyone, half of your time is over. Only half time is left. Okay. Was I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So for just for Mazia, you just joined in or what? Okay. So this is your test going on, Mazia. You can start with the test right now. So it's for 30 minutes and half of the time is gone, but you just start the test, okay, and finish it. I'm here. You can, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay, Mazia, am I audible? Yes, just finish the test first.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, how much time is left?
Uh, take 5 minutes, more or less. And for Mazia, you joined late, so you can take 10 minutes more. Will you finish in that, Mazia?
No, sir, because I just started.
Okay, so you complete this, you complete it. Okay, and for others, try to finish in 5 minutes because you also have to send. Okay, one more announcement. So instead of WhatsApping it to me, you have to send it to the number from which you get your invites, the class invitations, right? Everyone, is it clear? You all get class invitations from a WhatsApp number, right? The links.
Yes.
Yes. Just send the picture to that number. I'll share at the end also. So take 5 more minutes and finish it. Mazia, you continue doing, okay? Okay. Try to finish, everyone. Try to wind up. I have received Arpit's assignment. Arpit, you have submitted, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And I've received Samara's as well.
So I can still send it to your email, right?
Yeah, you can you send it on the number from which you get invites?
Sir, I'll have to go and fetch it. So, or sir, if you could give me that number, then I can send
Yeah,
it.
I'll write it. I can write it here. I'll write it. Let me type it to you. Type it to everyone. Can you see the number in the chat?
Yes, sir, got it.
You have to send it on this number. I have received 3 assignments. Arpit, Samaya, and Fatima. Please send it quickly now. The time is over for everyone.
Sir, you got my paper?
Yes, who is it? Just one moment.
Noor. Sorry, Fatima.
Fatima, yes. Fatima, yes, I've got your paper. But for Fatima, Samira, and Arpit. Got it for Fatima Munir as well.
Sir, did you get my paper?
You have not written a name at the top of the paper, right?
Okay, yes, I didn't write. I named it on the document. I'm sorry. Should I scan it again?
No, it's fine. So you have mailed it.
Okay.
Did you WhatsApp or mail?
I WhatsApped it, sir.
Yes, I received your. I received Kulsum's as well. Okay, Mazia, three students have not sent yet. Mazia, how long will you take, Mazia?
Oh, sir, I started at 4:34, so
24.
just two, like just 5 10 minutes more.
Especially when there are tests, try not to come late because then it's problematic. Okay, others, please send in. Mazia, take your time. Finish it. Not received for Alia. Alia and Zersh. Okay, Alia is sending in 2 minutes. Zersh.
Yes, sir. I'm just sending it.
We will discuss. We will discuss the paper. Arpit. Unlikely that you
Sir,
did.
did you receive it?
You have sent.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone, if you want, you can take a quick water break, 2-3 minutes. I'll be allowing Mazia to finish and submit. Leave some few more minutes. Okay, take a quick break, and then we will discuss and proceed with the class. Mazia, you done?
Almost.
Let me know as soon as you submit. Mazia, you were not present in the last class? Yesterday, were you present yesterday, Mazia? Yes. No problem, Zarsh. We will discuss. That's why this in-class test was necessary for me to figure out what is the flaw in your revision when you go back home after the class. I'm also checking your assignments. It's time.
So do I have to send it to
Yes, just click a picture
the
and send
Learnivio?
WhatsApp number, yes, from which you get your class invitation links. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, time to come back. Are you all there? Alia, Arpit, Fatima, Fatima Munir, Kulsum, Matthew, Mazia, Sumaira, Zarsh. Everyone is there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Maria, shall we start discussing? I think you're sending it or you have sent it. Sent. Okay, perfect. So it will receive it. Okay, very well. So I see that some of you have not attempted all the questions, not even attempted. So first thing is you have to attempt questions. Okay. See, there are three things you should keep in mind when you are attempting a subjective test. School tests or boards, the subjective part of it. If you leave any question, it's clear that you're not going to get any marks. If you leave it, it's gone. It's a sure short zero. And there is no negative marking in subjective questions. So the best thing is to attempt the question. And the kind of classes we do, the kind of classes I conduct, there must be something that you know about that concept, right? And our motive for you when you sit in your exams is to ensure that you get as many good, as much marks as you can. Okay, so you know something about every concept that has been asked to you. So even if you don't know the exact answer, please do attempt subjective questions. Okay, so those who have not attempted few questions, I can see in your assignments, it's not a good thing. So attempting all the questions is must if you are a student of Learnivio and if you are my student. Is it clear to everyone? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's do not hesitate. See, if you write it wrong, for wrong answers you will get 0. But maybe you write something that examiner thought, okay, this does not deserve full marks, but still I can give 1 or 2 marks to the person, and that's not a bad thing to get as many marks as you can. So not attempting is bad. Okay, so starting with the first question and what concepts these questions are testing, we'll discuss that quickly before we start with the new thing in today's class. So why is apple called a false fruit? And I'll go to Zersh for the answer. Zersh, what have you written? What do you think? Zersh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I didn't write anything.
Missed, yeah. Oh, okay.
Actually, I don't know the answer. Like, I joined Learnivio when we were at chapter 4, and this part I didn't realize.
Okay, Matthew, why is apple called a false fruit?
Because the edible part is not formed from the ovary.
Yes.
Instead, it's formed from the thalamus. So it's called false fruit.
So you know it's formed from the thalamus, but you have written in your answer it's formed from
Yes, I wrote thallus. Yeah.
thalamus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thalamus. So Zersh, the concept here is, so you have to go back and revise chapter 2, in which there's something called true fruit and false fruit. Only a ripened ovary is a real fruit in biology. Okay, Zersh? If any edible fruit developed from ovary, so that ovary is the edible part, that is a true fruit. If anything else apart from the ovary develops into a fruit, and we are eating the other tissues, like we eat thalamus in case of apple. So if you look at apple carefully, there is always a center part which we leave, right? That's not very edible. It has seeds inside. Okay, Serge, you understand? Actually, that was the ovary, which should have been ripened if apple was a true fruit. So that's why apple is a false fruit, because the edible ripened part is thalamus and not ovary. Is it clear, Darsh?
Yes, sir.
What is spermatic cord? Arpit,
Yes, sir.
what is spermatic cord? What have you written?
Sir, I have written like it is a group of various structures which include vas deferens, testicular arteries, veins, lymphatic vessels, and cremaster vessels. Sir, they all arise from this cord.
Yes, right. So your answer is correct. So spermatic cord arises from the scrotum. It goes up into the abdominal wall, and it's not just, it contains a lot of things. It contains vas deferens. It contains lymphatic vessels, arteries, veins, and cremaster muscles. Okay. So though it's called spermatogenesis, I think we did this in the last class only. If
Yes, sir.
I remember correctly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. Okay, androgens are produced by, so these kind of questions often do come in examination where they will write you a statement, then they will ask whether that statement is true or false, and if it is false, then you have to write the true statement. So androgens are produced by Sertoli cells. First, tell me if it is true or false, Samira.
False.
Okay, sorry, Samira. Now, Samira, tell me what is the true statement.
Sperms are produced from Sertoli.
Sorry,
Sperms are produced from Sertoli cells.
sperms are produced from Sertoli cells. Are you sure? Fatima?
Sir, androgens are produced by Leydig cells, which are present in the seminiferous tubule.
Again, you also have one mistake. So the correct statement is androgens. Androgens, I told you that they are male hormones. Testosterone is
Yes, sir.
one, the major player. They are just tricking you by asking that androgens are produced by Sertoli cells. Remember, Sertoli cells do not produce, like they are supportive cells. They only produce nutritive things for the developing sperm. So if you are saying that sperms are produced by Sertoli cells, it means that sperms come out of Sertoli cells. To produce something is to make it in the cell. Okay, so I realized that Samira, you have just one flaw in the concept that sperms are produced and are supported, not produced. Sperms are supported by Sertoli cells. They are called nurse cells. Remember our class? There we discussed that they are called nurse cells.
You said for me also there was some problem. What was that?
Sorry?
You told that there was some mistake in my answer also.
Yes, sperms are not produced by Sertoli cells.
So
Okay.
I said androgen. No, I said androgen are produced by Leydig cells.
Yes, but you also said that which are present in seminiferous tubules.
Yeah.
That is not correct. Leydig cells are not present in seminiferous tubules. Leydig cells are present in the interstitial space around the seminiferous tubules. So where the tubule is not present, these interstitial tissues are present, and Leydig cells are the part of that interstitial spaces. Okay, so the correct statement is androgens are produced by Leydig cells. Okay, everyone understood?
Yes.
Write that. Why is pollen pistil interaction important? Mazia, this do you know the answer for this, Mazia?
Sir.
Yes, please.
Mm.
Yes, Arvind.
Sir, pollen-pistil interaction is important because it will allow the stigma to recognize pollen which belong to the same species, and it also prevents foreign pollen from entering into pistil.
It also prevents
Foreign pollen, like which does not belong to the species.
foreign, yes, foreign or misfit pollen. Okay, so you're right. So pollen pistil interaction is very important for species recognition. The first thing is species recognition, that the same pollen of the same species starts making a tube. Okay, so it's a biochemical interaction and it's important for species identification. Those who have not written the word species identification or species recognition, but have also written that what Arpit said, that to recognize the pollen, that will also fetch you marks, no problem. Okay, now what are Leydig cells? What is their function? Kulsum.
The region outside the seminiferous tubules contains small blood vessels, and they are called interstitial space. They also contain interstitial cells or Leydig cells. They synthesize and secrete testicular hormone called androgen, and Leydig cells are also primary cells that produce testosterone.
Yes, right. So that's the correct and complete answer. Perfect. So everyone.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes, Kulsum.
The third question, androgens are produced, that true or false? It's for 2 marks.
I've asked, so one is for you saying that it is true or false, and actually this question was not like for any marks. I just put it in 2 marks because I wanted to see. First is for identifying true or false, and if false, then you have to write the true statement. There should be some easy questions also. So 40% of your questions in examination in boards are decisively easier, so that boards always want you to pass and not to struggle much. So that is one, that easy mark gainer for.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, like the first question in third marker, sir, like how do we have to write, like how we will be fetched marks accordingly? Like 1 mark for
Question asks what is something and what is the function. You first talk about what is it. So in
Yes.
Leydig cells, what Kulsum said is she's telling everything about the Leydig cells. Even if you don't tell about the interstitial tissue and just say that Leydig cells are secretory cells present around the seminiferous tubules in the interstitial tissue, which secretes androgens, and their function is, the major function is to secrete testosterone. Okay,
Yes.
that will fetch you marks. Okay, 1.5 and 1.5 each. Explain in brief the hormonal regulation of male reproductive system. Matthew.
Sir, I wrote about the LH, FSH, and all that. So basically, a hypothalamic hormone called GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, stimulates the pituitary gland to secrete 2 hormones. One is luteinizing hormone, which stimulates the Leydig cells to produce testosterone and other androgens, and follicle stimulating hormone, which acts on the fertilized cells and stimulates spermatogenesis.
Yes, and I do not see a flow chart. So whenever there is a trick, so if a question comes that explains something in brief, and if that thing is a process, if that is oogenesis or spermatogenesis or meiosis or mitosis or hormonal regulation, anything that is a process and for which you can make a flow chart. So it's very good to make a flow chart and then write few lines about it. It makes your answer, like you can answer it faster and you will get like full marks. Do you understand?
Okay, sir. Okay.
I also explained you hormonal regulation through a flow chart. Hypothalamus, then by arrow I said secretes this, goes to pituitary, it secretes LS and FSH, goes to testes. So if they specifically ask about the male reproductive system, you do not need to include ovaries, just put testes, and then FSH starts the spermatogenesis, LH starts the secretion of testosterone, and then testosterone, you can write down that testosterone is responsible for 2 things. One is secondary sexual characters development, and the second thing is maintaining spermatogenesis. Okay, so you have not drawn a flow chart. You could have drawn a flow chart here. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Third, cleistogamous flowers can do geitonogamy but not autogamy. Is the statement true or false? And justify your answers. For this, I'll go to who would like to answer this? Anyone? Maharaj.
So that is false, sir.
It's false. So what is, you justify your, what is the true statement and why is this a false statement?
This statement is false because some plants such as oxalis produce 2 types of flowers which are similar to other species. These exposed anthers and stigmas. These are called cleistogamous flowers. That happens in autogamy.
So what are cleistogamous flowers specifically? Fatima Munir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Is this statement true or false according to you? Cleistogamous flowers can do geitonogamy but not autogamy.
It is false.
What is the true statement?
Cleistogamous flowers always undergoes autogamy and not geitonogamy.
Yes. And why is that?
I did not know that, so I didn't write it.
Okay. So if you, because justify your answer is, why are you saying that that statement is If it is true, then still you have to justify. If it is false, then you have to write the true statement and justify. So anyone who has justified the statement apart from Mehraj, I found some flaws in Mehraj's justification, so I'll go to someone else before giving the right answer. Arpit, you have written anything about? You have not attempted.
I got confused.
Yeah.
I forgot the function.
Okay. Kulsum, coming back to you.
Sir, I wrote false because cleistogamous flowers favor autogamy and not geitonogamy. As they do not open at all, the foreign pollen grain does not land on the stigma of such flowers. That's why they do self-pollination.
Yes. You can just say that cleistogamous flowers are closed flowers. They do not open, so their stigma is never exposed to the environment so that a pollinator can bring in any pollen from any other plant or any other flower. So all it can do is autogamy, neither geitonogamy nor xenogamy. Okay. If instead of geitonogamy there is xenogamy also, the answer stays the same. Okay, but geitonogamy is more closer to autogamy. That's why this is mostly in the questions. Last, what is double fertilization and triple fusion?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, there are two events which are simultaneously taking place. That is, one male nucleus fuses with egg cell and forms zygote. And sir, second male nucleus fuses with polar nuclei and forms endosperm. Sir, when these above processes takes place together, this is known as double fertilization.
But where do they take place together? That you have not mentioned. Okay. Where is this happening?
Embryo sac of angiosperm.
Embryo sac.
Angiosperm. So you have to write that in angiosperms, there are two fertilization events that happen in the embryo sac. One is the fertilization of a male gamete with the egg cell, which gives rise to zygote and embryo. Remember, I made two equation kind of things.
Yes, sir.
Plus egg cell equals to, you can write like that. And the second is another male gamete with the polar nuclei to give rise to endosperm. That is called double fertilization. What is triple fusion? Alia, can you speak? Alia, there? Alia has some issues with the mic. Okay. Mazia? Yes, please, Alia, get your mic fixed because you are losing some very crucial discussions. Mazia, have you attempted this question? Let me just see. What is triple fusion? Mazia is also not able to speak. Okay, going to Sumaira then. Sumaira.
One male nucleus fuses with the polar nuclei, which leads to the formation of primary endosperm cell, which leads to endosperm, which is a triploid cell, and that is called triple fusion.
See, it's not called triple fusion because it gives rise to a triploid cell. That is the effect. Like, so there's something called cause and result. But it's called triple fusion because three nuclei are fusing. So when you are writing the correct thing, but you are not orienting your answer correct. And if the examiner wants can deduct mark, so you have to write that triple fusion is the second fertilization event in double fertilization where three nuclei are fusing together, one from the male gamete and two haploid nuclei from the polar cell, from the central cell known as the polar nuclei. So the fusion of these three nuclei, then you can write what you were writing, which gives rise to endosperm, is called a triple fusion. Okay, just to be double sure, remember how to orient the answers correctly. Okay, everyone.
Okay, sir.
Anyone has any doubts regarding the test? I think you all know how much water, how deep you are in the puddle. So I realized that all of you understand certain concepts, but when it comes to writing, you have to practice a little more. You have to orient your answers better. Okay, everyone? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any doubts before we start with today's class? Can everyone see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes.
So this is where we were. Okay, someone's writing. Alia, did you write yes for a doubt, or do you have any doubt? Any questions? Okay. So in the last class, we finished with the male system, and I told you that we will be starting with oogenesis, correct? In this class.
Yes, sir.
Before I start with oogenesis, I think the test itself was a good parameter for a revision. Okay, let's begin with oogenesis. You all are clear with spermatogenesis, everyone? Meiosis and spermatogenesis?
Yes.
Yes. So what was happening basically in spermatogenesis? It was very straightforward. It was a simple meiotic process where we know in meiotic cell division, one cell divides and give rise to 4 daughter cells at the end of the cycle, correct? This is what is meiosis. And it's called reductional division because at the end of the cycle, the cells that we get, the daughter cells, they are all of half the ploidy of the parent cell, right? Now, you all have the notebook. Please go to the page where you have noted down spermatogenesis and keep it handy, okay? So I will ask you to switch between the pages to just do a comparative analysis. That's why we are taking this topic first, because we will be able to finish it today. Now, oogenesis, let's write down some basics first. It's the production of oocytes. And as we know, the synthesis of oocytes is not as straightforward or as simple as of the sperms, correct? What is the first fundamental difference between oogenesis and spermatogenesis?
Both produce 2 different gametes.
Oh, that's there, of course. One is male gamete, one is female, but if both are happening through meiosis, so we understand that meiosis is happening, so it must be a reductional division. That's okay. But what is the fundamental difference in the way they happen? When does spermatogenesis begins?
At puberty.
Puberty.
And when does oogenesis begins?
Since the
The
child is in
Molecule
the
at
womb of
embryonic
the mother.
stage.
Yes, everyone answered together, but I could see that everyone was knowing the answer. Yes, correct. Oogenesis starts from embryonic stage, and it does not completes in one go. So it starts, then gets arrested. There's a pause, and then it again begins from where it was arrested when puberty reaches, and then it finally makes a mature oocyte. Now with oogenesis, the thing is that we know. I have already told you. Have we already discussed about how many primary oocytes are produced and all that thing in ovary? No, right?
No, sir.
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
So write down few quick things before we start oogenesis. Write down. Oogenesis begins during the embryonic stage of a female. Oogenesis begins during the embryonic stage of a female. And in the embryonic ovary of a female fetus. in the embryonic ovary of a female fetus, there are around a couple millions of oocytes, primary oocytes formed. So when a female is in her mother's womb and she starts doing oogenesis in her tiny ovaries, then these ovaries, when they start oogenesis, they just keep doing meiosis, and with this they start the so they start the process and they make couple millions of primary oocytes. Now remember, what was primary spermatocyte? Go back quickly and tell me what was primary spermatocyte and what was the ploidy level.
2n.
Yes, it was diploid. And what was special about primary spermatocyte as a cell? It was a diploid cell, and this is the cell which will now start meiosis, right? To form primary spermatocyte, you do not need to do meiosis, yes or no?
Yes.
Similarly, to make primary oocyte, you do not need, you just have to divide mitotically and make lots and lots of primary oocytes. So there are a couple million of primary oocytes in ovary before birth. Okay. Then what happens? Just before the birth, there comes a period known as atresia. Atresia is the time at which massive degeneration of these primary oocytes take place. So these primary oocytes starts to degenerate, they starts to die. So they first make couple millions of them through division, and then they starts dying. So write down, atresia is the period in which majority of primary oocytes before birth degenerate.
Can you repeat?
Atresia is the period during which majority of primary oocytes in the ovary before birth degenerates. So they all die. And because of this atresia, which is like mass degeneration, at birth, when birth takes place, at birth, each ovary, write down, at birth of a female, each ovary contains around 60,000 to 80,000 primary oocytes. 60,000 to 80,000 primary oocytes arrested at prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Okay, so NCERT only talks about this phase. So in a cell division, there are phases like prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. You know that? These are different.
Yes, sir.
You have studied about this in class, in the cell division.
11th, sir. So 11th.
Yes, class 11. And then prophase is the first phase where like of division, and it gets arrested at prophase. Now this prophase also has multiple sub stages. Okay, and if you just want to know for your, I don't think it will be asked because this is not in NCERT, but the stage at which it is arrested is diplotin. Diplotin of prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Is it clear? So this is just know it. Just remember that.
So what does
Yes.
it mean by they get arrested?
Yes.
Like they get.
Yes, I'll tell you. So by getting arrested means, let's look here. So this is a cell, okay? In a cell, before division happens, what happens? Before the cell starts dividing, it starts replicating its genetic material, correct? It makes everything double because it's going to divide, and then it's going to segregate, but it's going to divide the components, including the genetic material, equally in each daughter cell. So every DNA, every chromosome gets doubled, makes a replicated copy, and then they align at the center in metaphase. Remember class 11? And then spindle fibers attach to them from both the ends, and they, if you see a cell division animation, the chromosomes align at the center and fibers comes from each side and then push half of the chromosome towards one cell, the other half towards the other cell, and then the cell division happens from the middle, right? Yes, this is how a cell divides. Yes or no? Who asked the question?
Yes.
So by getting arrested means at every these stages, which we call prophase, metaphase, these are basically cell cycle stages where there are checkpoints. So they do not cross this checkpoint and the cell do not get the signal to proceed further. So it stays in prophase. Okay, that is called the cell is arrested in a division, like from the division point of view. So it committed itself to divide. For example, you committed yourself to run a 1 kilometer marathon, but after 250 meters, you just could not proceed. You were just told to freeze, so you froze. So you cannot proceed now because you did not get the signal. Do you understand? More appropriate analogy will be like of a train crossing many stations. So unless and until it gets a green signal at a particular station, it cannot move forward, right? So to cross every stage, the cell has some internal cues or signals that are given to the cell that, okay, everything in prophase went well. So proceed to metaphase, start aligning your chromosomes at the center. Then everything in the metaphase went well. Now start segregating half on each side. That is called anaphase. Then telophase is where they are towards the end and the cell starts making like a division furrow in the center. So every stage progresses. So it's actually in biology it's continuous, but we know that on a molecular level they are regulated. So this arrest is important at prophase 1. Why it is important, we will talk about it. But you understood what do we mean by getting arrested?
Yes, sir.
So you just have to understand biochemistry is very, very elaborate. If I go into that, it will take more than one class, but just know that the enough required signal cues to proceed was not given to the cell and it arrests. So when a female baby is born, she has around 60,000 to 80,000 primary oocytes arrested at prophase 1 of meiosis 1 in each of her ovary. Now, what is this number? Let's try to figure out how many oocytes a female will release in her entire lifetime. Now, we cannot calculate that for males because spermatogenesis is continuous. It starts from puberty and never stops. It only stops when the male dies, okay, with the death. So from puberty to natural death or death is the period of spermatogenesis. But you know already that females do not have a lifelong reproductive phase, right? There is something called menarche and something called menopause. We studied that. Did I tell you this? Did I tell you about menarche and menopause? Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
But I
So,
but I know
Yeah.
what this.
You didn't tell, but we studied.
Okay, so let's discuss that. Let me tell you. Write down. When after birth, the ovary, after birth, the ovary stays functionally inactive. After birth, the ovary stays functionally inactive with respect to oogenesis, or secreting female sex hormones. So nothing happens, okay? Everything is as it is. And write down, at the onset of puberty, the first reproductive cycle begins. The first reproductive cycle begins. Now, this reproductive cycle is also known as menstrual cycle, okay? Or menstruation. Okay. So in this cycle, it's first spotted by the bleeding phase in females. We will discuss about this cycle in detail, but know that this cycle, when it first starts, this first cycle is known as menarche. Write down. The first menstrual cycle is known as menarche. Okay. And when does females reach puberty? This I think we have discussed. At what age do females reach puberty?
10 to 11.
11 to 13, I'll say more appropriate. For males, it is 13 to 15 according to your NCRT, and it's 11 to 13 years for females. So let's take the lower limit, which is 11, okay? And females do not have a lifelong reproductive cycle. It ceases. So the last reproductive cycle, okay, where this menstrual cycle ends or pauses forever, is called menopause. Okay, this is the last cycle, and it happens around 45 to 50 years. At the age of 45 to 50 years in females. In some females, it happens at 45, 46. In some females, it can happen late, around 50 years. But it starts getting arrhythmic from the mid 40s. So it is very, very rhythmic and very, very regulated in the teens and 20s and 30s. When a female reaches 40 and reaches towards the late 40s, it starts getting arrhythmic. So the days will starts getting like it will be variable. The bleeding phase will be variable. Sometimes it will occur after 20 days, sometimes after 15, sometimes after a month. So that's called arrhythmic menstrual cycle. So it starts getting arrhythmic and then stops permanently at around 50 years. Okay. Now let's take the lower limit here. Let's assume that it started at 11. Let's assume it started at 10. Okay. And let's say it ended at 50. I'll tell you why are we doing this exercise. So for how many years the female was reproductively viable? Maximum. For how many years a female can be reproductively viable?
40 years.
Active. Around 40 years. Okay. And let's assume that there was no pregnancy. So to maximize the ovulation process, when there is pregnancy, For the 9 months of pregnancy, there is no menstrual cycle happening then, okay, because the womb is carrying a baby, so that cycle stops. So let's assume there is no pregnancy, and for 40 years it is happening. Now you have to remember, each ovary, write down, each ovary release oocyte in alternate manner. And this menstrual cycle or menstruation in humans is approximately of around 28 days, give or take 1 or 2 days more or less, but 28 days. So it's around a month. So let's consider this as a month. Okay. So if each ovary release oocyte in alternate manner, then in January, if left ovary release the ovum, then in February it will be the right ovary. And then again in March, it will be the left ovary of the female. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes.
So in 1 year, how many oocytes will each ovary release?
6.
Hmm?
6.
6. So in 1 year, each ovary is releasing 6 oocytes only. Then in 40 years, how many oocytes will each ovary release?
240.
240. So total oocytes, which is also the maximum limit that each ovary can release in entire lifetime. Entire reproductive life. For female is around 240. Okay. Let's take it for our sake of calculation to 250 at max. And this is also when we are assuming there is no pregnancy. Is it clear? So each ovary at max in the entire life needs only 250 oocytes. But how many does it have at birth? 60,000 to 80,000. Okay. So the ovary is never going to run out of oocytes. Yes? Yes or no?
Yes.
So one question that is very common that comes to students' head is that when I ask, why do you think that in females menopause happen, which means that their reproductive cycle is limited, they stop uh, uh, this menstrual cycle, or they are no more reproductively viable. So one thing that cropped up to their head was that maybe the ovary is out of oocytes to release now, so it stops. But it's never the case. It has way more oocytes than it can release in the entire life. Yes, Fatima, you were saying something?
So is it because of the hormones being produced minimum amount?
Yes, it has menopause. We will come to it. It has lots of integrated reasons and factors. One, yes, hormonal regulation, correct, is one very important factor. We will study about that. Okay, but just remember, then combined, both the ovaries combined together, they will not release more than 500 oocytes in the entire life of the female. This is a neat question. Write it down. Both the ovaries combined will release not more than 500 oocytes in the entire life of the female. Will release not more than 500 oocytes in the entire life of the female. So the option will be something, but if the question is maximum, there will be something around 450 to 500 a range in the option, and you have to choose that. Now let's talk about these oocytes. Just similar to spermatocyte, what happens during oocyte? So remember, in spermatocyte there was something called primordial germ cell. Go back to the page. Spermatocytes, all the gonads and gametes are produced from this one cell known as primordial germ cell, PGC, right?
Yes, sir.
Now this is not like in the ovary, but it also forms the ovary. So when it is in the ovary, so this line marks the processes which are happening in the ovary. So in the ovary, just like spermatogenesis, the primordial germ cells give rise to oogonium. Remember, there it was spermatogonium. Yes.
Yes.
And what is the ploidy level of oogonium?
Diploid.
Yes, because this was also diploid. Now this oogonium, will start dividing mitotically. So mitotic division. Here also it was mitotic division. Here also it is mitotic division. What did spermatogonia form? Quickly. This way we will remember both, and we will also remember the difference. What did spermatogonia?
Primary spermatocyte.
Yes. So what will be formed here?
Primary oocyte.
Primary oocyte. And what will be the ploidy of primary oocyte?
2N.
N.
No, not N, Matthew. It will be 2N. Again.
Yeah, 2N. Yeah, I said 2N. I
Okay.
think the mic cut.
Yeah, the mic got unmuted at N. 2N. Now this primary oocyte is just like primary spermatocyte, and all of this, the difference is that from this point to this point, all of this is happening in
The fetus.
yes, in the fetal stage, right? During the embryonic stage. You can write fetal or you can write embryonic, it's the same thing. So this is happening during the fetal stage. Whereas in case of spermatogenesis, this, so I will write here, okay, this is in ovary from this line onwards. Whereas in case of spermatocytes, all of this from spermatogonium to primary oocyte to everything was happening in after puberty, after birth, right? So that's the only difference. Now, just like in spermatogenesis, primary spermatocyte was the first cell that will now commit to undergo meiosis, right? So meiosis 1 begins, but it never ends. Okay, so primary oocytes start meiosis 1, but gets arrested at phase 1. Okay, this also till here is happening in the fetal stages. Okay, then at this junction the birth happens. Okay, and when the birth happens, already this primary oocyte has undergone atresia, and it has also undergone meiosis 1, and it is arrested at prophase 1. And by this time there are around 60,000 to 80,000 in each ovary. All of this is clear to you, right? At birth, what will happen? Will anything happen to this primary oocyte? Fatima, what will happen after birth? At birth,
So will it become haploid?
No, nothing will happen at birth. It will continue like this. Remember, the ovary is inactive, just the line above I dictated you 5 minutes ago. I dictated you a line that after birth, the ovary stays inactive with respect to oogenesis and also with respect to releasing the sex hormones. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So from birth to puberty, nothing happens. Okay. After, when they reach puberty, then only what happens? At puberty, what happens? The meiosis 1, sorry, write it more clearly. The meiosis 1 completes. Now, all the textbooks write it like this because this is the only way to represent the flow chart. But remember, the meiosis 1 does not complete for all the oocytes at puberty. Okay. When ovary will require an oocyte, it will choose one of the oocytes, develop it through the whole process, make a mature ovum and release it. Is it clear? Many of these throughout the life, because they are 60,000 to 80,000 and you are only going to use 250 at max. So you will not invest energy in completing everyone's cycle, right? So they will always stay on the shelf for the rest of the life. Do you understand? But for those oocytes which are chosen, like the first oocyte which is chosen for the first cycle from the left ovary, let's say, or the right ovary, then meiosis 1 completes for that oocyte. And what happens when meiosis 1 completes? Meiosis 1 is the reductional division. What happens when meiosis?
Haploid.
So 2 haploid cells are formed, right?
Yes, sir.
And what was primary oocyte for primary spermatocyte forming after meiosis 1?
Secondary spermatocyte.
Yes, so here it will be
Secondary oocyte.
secondary oocyte. But there should be 2 secondary oocytes, no? Because one primary spermatocyte forms 2 secondary spermatocytes, and that is the calculation we did there, right? The questions come that how many sperms, mature sperms, you get from one primary spermatocyte and things like that. Remember, we did that?
Yes, sir, yeah.
So here, technically, from one primary oocyte, 2 secondary oocytes should be formed after the meiosis 1 is completed. Yes?
Yes, sir.
But at the end, and similarly, when secondary oocyte will again go into meiosis 2, which is just like mitosis, equational division. Remember, meiosis 2 mimics mitosis, the concept? Yes or no?
Yes, sir, equational division.
Equational. So meiosis, the overall meiosis is a reductional division. But if you look carefully, only meiosis 1 is reductional, but meiosis 2 is just equational. Because secondary oocytes are already haploid. So this is the first haploid cell, just like secondary spermatocytes were haploid. Now, when this undergoes meiosis 2, there should be 4, just like sperms, right? But do the ovaries release 4 oocytes in one cycle?
No, sir.
How many oocytes do ovaries release in one cycle?
Only one.
Only one. So how is it happening that they are undergoing meiosis, but they are, sorry? Anyone?
It forms polar body.
Yes. Was it Fatima Munir?
No, Zarsh.
Zarsh, yes, correct. They form polar body. But what is polar body is the question here. Now, meiosis 1, just write down in the bracket, it's a reductional division. Okay. So it's the reductional part where 2n became n. So one secondary oocyte is formed, but along with this, they form something called polar body. This is the first polar body that is formed. Now, what is polar body? Polar body is just another cell which is a result of unequal distribution. So this kind of a division is called unequal division. Now, by unequal, I mean this polar body is a very small cell with almost nil or very minimal cytoplasm and just a haploid nucleus. So actually the ploidy of polar body is also haploid, just like secondary oocyte. But secondary oocyte has everything, cytoplasm, everything which is required in the ovum, all the cell organelles, because this is a proper cell. But polar body is devoid of important things. It only has one haploid nucleus and very minimal cytoplasm. So it's just like this is discarded. We do not need you. So go, and when you are going, do not take. Yes, Fatima.
Sir, what if the polar body and the secondary oocyte have very minimum difference, and the secondary oocyte is only a little bit more, having more cytoplasm and nucleus, only a little bit than the polar body?
So you means what if the division is not regulated, and instead of dividing 95% and 5%, it is 40 and 60? This is your question?
More like 40 and 50.
40 and 50 is 90.
Sorry, 40 and 60, yeah.
So that does not happen, because this meiosis, which happens in oocyte, is a specialized meiosis where the cell divides unequally and the polar body is going to be discarded out. So we do not need this haploid genome. Anyways, we will again do a division, so you will understand it better. Let me go forward. So meiosis 1 complete, secondary oocyte is formed. After this also, what happens?
Meiosis 2.
Meiosis 2 completes, and meiosis 2 is just like mitosis. So it is equational part only, right?
Yes, sir.
Equational part where the haploid secondary oocytes form a fully mature, now we call it ovum, fully mature egg cell, which is again haploid, right? Sorry. Which is again haploid. So a haploid cell gave rise to a haploid cell. So the ploidy remains equal, right? So this part mimics mitosis only. And this is known as a ovum is a fully mature egg cell. Now there are certain twists here. While making an ovum also, there will be another unequal division which will give rise to another polar body, right, Fatima? And this is where your answer lies. So this polar body is the second polar body. What is the ploidy of the polar body again?
And
so if you say that at this stage they could not effectively do unequal division, then both of them, if both of them have things which are required to proceed further, both of them will proceed further and make two and two each 4 ovums, right? And the process fails. That can be a disorder, but it is not seen. It never happens. These cells are very, very regulated. Do you understand, Fatima, why it cannot afford to do mistake at this step? Because if you do mistake at this step, and if both of them are still viable, then they will go and form 4 cells with unequally like 40, 55, 60 and things like that. But it should not happen. So all the cytoplasm goes to secondary oocyte, all the cell organelles goes to secondary oocyte, all the proteins inside the cell goes to secondary oocyte. The polar body is left with just a haploid nucleus and a little bit of cytoplasm. Over time it will degenerate. Is it clear?
yes, sir.
Yes. And finally, even when we are doing meiosis, and remember second chapter when I told you about megasporogenesis, when I was teaching you megasporogenesis, which is the formation of ovules, I told you that from the MMC, megaspore mother cell, it divides meiotically to give rise to 4 haploid cells, out of which 3 degenerate, only 1 becomes a embryo sac. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Not remember, you can go back to those notes and realize that why in nature females always, when they do meiosis, they do unequal division, or even if it is equal, they degenerate the rest and they only carry forward 1 from that pool of 4 daughter cells. So here also, according to normal meiosis, there should have been 4 daughter cells, but they started doing unequal division and they made 2 polar bodies, and as a result only 1 ovum at the end was formed. But is it the ovum that gets secreted from the ovary? Does the ovum get secreted from the ovary? Yes or no? People?
Yes, sir.
No, it's the secondary oocyte. So this is released during
What happens to the ovum?
Yes, I'll come to that. This is released during ovulation from ovary. So we have a lot of misconceptions about the process, because when you read it from NCERT, you see this whole process. At the end, we get ovum and you think, okay, now ovum is made and then the fully mature ovum is released. No, the secondary oocyte is released during ovulation from ovaries. Remember that. This is a neat question. Make a star here. Whatever can confuse you, they ask it. And it's very well given in the NCERT. They have written explicitly that secondary oocyte is released during ovulation. But we know that secondary oocyte still has to complete meiosis too, right? It is like you are giving a job to a final year student who has yet not cleared the last semester. And it happens, right? When companies come to college, the placement cell, you can get a job in most of the courses way before you actually finish your education, right? Yes or no? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So it means that secondary oocyte is released, which means this meiotic 2, the half cycle, the 1 cycle of the meiosis, is actually happening outside the ovary. Yes or no? Because it's already out of the ovary. So whatever is happening after this stage is happening outside the ovary. Yes or no? From secondary oocyte to ovum is happening outside the ovary. Say yes or no. Is there any other possibility? If you are released, if you are like, if I expel you out from a room, and then whatever happens to you happens out of that room, no?
Yes, sir.
So the fully matured ovum is not produced in the ovary. It is produced in the fallopian tube. Not produced, but it becomes fully mature in the fallopian tube. Remember that. So the completion of meiosis 2, again, another neat question, write it down. Where does the completion of meiosis 2 in oogenesis takes place? Options are ovaries. 2 other options will be there. One will be fallopian tube or oviduct, and none of the above or anything. But you will choose ovary because you think oogenesis happens in ovary, but that's the wrong answer. The answer is oviduct, fallopian tube. So write down meiosis 2 completes in the oviducts during oogenesis. Is it clear, everyone? So we discussed few neat questions from previous years based on this topic.
So you said in the oviduct, after that you said something?
No, in the oviduct. I said, is it clear? Zarsh,
Yeah.
Yes, she's giving me answers in the chat. She's right. At the time of fertilization. But we will come to that in the next class. So in the next class, we will take the female reproductive system, but you already understood oogenesis. So this is happening during the fetal stage, then the puberty, and this part onward from puberty, write it. This part is called reproductive phase or cycle. Okay. Any doubts, people? We are slightly above the time limit, but I think it was important to finish this. Any doubts in oogenesis? What happens where, at what time? Is it clear how many polar bodies are produced? 2. And also, if meiosis 2 completes outside the ovary, where is the second polar body formed?
Outside the ovary.
Where? Again in the oviducts, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So the first polar body is formed in the ovary, but the second polar body is not formed in the ovary. So these are some questions which comes from within the details of the process. Now they will come in entrances, but they are not explicitly explained in NCERT. But you should know it, okay? Because the process is given in NCERT. So go back and read NCERT, the whole female part. And in the next class, we will deal with the structures and with the hormonal regulation and everything that we did for the male part. Okay, everyone. Any doubts? Please ask. Was it someone from this batch who asked me about transgenders in some class? Anyone who asked me about how transgenders are formed? There was someone who asked. I also clicked the picture of the question. Was it? Yes. Was it you, Fatima?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I'll take it in the next class. Okay. Twins and transgenders, everything.